Wow. Do you think we should be like, I don't know, like more up and awake? Because none of you like went to school today, and we're all excited because you get to sleep in tomorrow and eat lots and lots of food. Right? Thanksgiving is like probably the best when it comes to holidays. Because first of all, food is great at Thanksgiving. I mean, if I can be fat and happy, I'm all about Thanksgiving food. And then you got football, and the cool thing is I keep adding more games now on Thanksgiving. So football games, yes, the parade, and we can watch the parade and watch Grants Pass March. Like, okay, over under less than a minute of airtime or more than a minute? That's the question. Like probably like 38 seconds. They'll be on TV, but they get to be there. And then you eat dessert. So like that's the best thing in a day. Like you get to eat good turkey dinner and dessert both same time. And I think I should see dessert the whole time. It's the greatest because you can eat lunch early and then have your dinner is dessert. So like you have dessert at like 3 o'clock after lunch, and then you also have dessert for dinner. I've decided that's the perfect way to do it. But if you really think about Thanksgiving, and maybe this is some of your guys' case, but when it comes to Thanksgiving or Christmas or holidays in general, it can get a little bit out of control. The fact of here you have a lot of family members come together, and there can be conflict that happens when you get some family together. And it's kind of a bummer when you think about how great a day like Thanksgiving can be and being thankful for all the things that we're thankful for, and then you have that one crazy uncle. Or that person in your family that has to make a fight about everything. And some people just really like to make a fight about everything. Like Thanksgiving has so many things that you can fight about in one little day. Like, when do you have lunch? When does lunch start? How do we cook the turkey? You put it on the Traeger, do you deep fry it, you just put it in the oven. Who's bringing desserts? What kind of desserts are you going to bring? Do you get to watch football before, do you have football on during dinner? Where do the kids sit? Do the kids have the kids table in the other room where it's, there's so many things that cause fights right off the bat. And maybe it's nothing, and all of a sudden there's a big time fight. But today we're in this book of James, and we come to this spot in James chapter 4. The first verse says this: what causes fights and quarrels among you? And I was thinking about that, here we have this day, Thanksgiving, and there's so many of us maybe not all of us, but there's many people, actually in our world, there's many people in the United States who love Thanksgiving who are much better off when Thanksgiving's over than when it started. They're way more thankful that they could go home than when they came to their relative's house to have a great dinner. And I think about that word conflict. And there will be so many conflicts that go on a day that should be super special. And it's really not. And my question is, why can't we all just get along? Why can't we just be friends, right? Why can't this day be put aside and our differences aside and we just come, have a meal together, and be thankful? And it's so many times it's not the case. So if you guys have your papers and notes and things, or you're going to take notes, we're going to look at a couple things. We're looking at the cause of conflict, and we're looking for the cure of conflict. And I will tell you, it's pretty simple. As I've studied this, it comes down to this. The cause of conflict, it's a 4-letter word. The cause of conflict is S-E-L-F. And as we look at this passage, we look at James chapter 4. If you have your Bible, you can turn there. We see that self is why so many conflicts happen. The idea of selfishness causes the fights and quarrels among us. So, James chapter 4, verse 1. What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? You desire, but you do not have, so you kill. You covet, but you cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God. And when you ask, you do not receive because you ask with the wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. Selfish things. And I was just in Hawaii with my wife, great week away, and in the midst of this trip, I got this whole idea of fights and quarrels. Because here I am on one of the mornings, we drove a couple miles from our hotel, and we went to this awesome restaurant, called Slappy Cakes. Anyone ever been to a Slappy Cakes? Yes. Slappy Cakes is the coolest thing. You go in, and it's a breakfast, and they don't make breakfast for you, you make it yourself. So what you do is you order your different kinds of pancake batter. And then you order all these toppings and things to put inside your cakes, and then on your table, there's this griddle built in. So as you're sitting there, you like pour your batter, nice buttermilk batter, and I put like macadamia nuts and strawberries, and you just watch it, and then all of a sudden you flip it over, and it's so, and you spend a lot of time. So we ate breakfast at this really nice place, and super fun, and I ate way too many pancakes. And then we decided, hey, let's explore a little bit. So we take our car, we start driving. We had gone 13 years before this, last time I had been to Maui. And as we're driving, we're like, hey, let's find that hotel we stayed at. So we keep driving up, like, oh, I think that's the one. Nope, this is, they all look the same. And then, like, they're all named the same. Like, you're not even in Lahaina, and this one's the Royal Lahaina. And this is, I don't know. So I think we found the hotel, and we pull in, and Mark's like, I don't remember. I'm like, I think that's it. Well, in the midst of that, we started talking about the last time we came in, and my wife gets seasick. She likes to snorkel, but as she's like in the water, all of a sudden she like wants to hurl inside of her snorkel. So we found this beach the last time we were there, and it was really cool because it was calm water, and like pretty much like you put your head in and there's fish like right there. And she's like, let's go to that beach again. And so we're driving, and the hotel's there, and we keep driving, and like I literally like pull in this one spot, and all of a sudden I realize that I can't back out, and I'm next to this one of those gate things that's gonna come down on the car, and it's not I can't even get into the hotel, and if I back up, you like drive over little spike strips that take out your tires. So I have to ask the guy, hey, can I just turn around? And he looks at me like, you're an idiot because you drove in here. And so then we keep going, and we try this other spot, we drive back in, and there's nowhere to park, and there's no beach there. I'm like, we're never going to find it. And we keep driving, we keep going, and this is probably an hour into, like, after our great breakfast, and, woke up and watched the sun, come up over the hills, and you're like, oh, it's so beautiful. And all of a sudden, I just snap. And I just realized, like, I just want to go back to our beach. Now, our beach that we were staying at our hotel was one of the best beaches in all of Maui. Like, there's this thing called Black Rock, and you can climb up and jump off the rocks, and there's turtles, and there's all kinds of rad fish, and everything's right there, and I just want to go back and lay on the beach. And I want to go back and snorkel at our beach, and my wife's driving us around, and I remember at that moment going, why am I driving? I'm getting frustrated because I can't find it, and I'm getting stuck in like parking lots, and I realized that all of a sudden, because I get selfish, this fight happened between my wife and I. And yeah, she's like, well, yeah, you can swim wherever, and I wanted to find a place that I wasn't going to get sick when I went out to snorkel, and I got to this point where I realized that I was trying to make it all about me. I was thinking this idea of self totally was why the fight and our quarrel happened. And yes, I realized like after like a second, like, I need to apologize. And we did find the beach, and we went out and we got in the water at that beach, and it was still nice water, and it was still great, and she could swim there and didn't get seasick, and so many things that I just had to realize that it wasn't about me. And so many things, and James says this, what causes the fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? It's us. It's our problem. It's our selfishness that causes most fights and quarrels. I think it's interesting because I could have done it, and I probably did at first, but we make excuses of why there's a fight and a quarrel. Or we blame it on the circumstances. Well, if I didn't get it, and that's stuck in that car, in that spot, and the tires, no, if we just stay in what it's worth, it's us. It's our problem. It's our self. It's just our self that is the problem. And maybe we do this, like, well, the devil made me do it. That's why I got in a fight. That's why we have this fight and quarrel, because it was the devil's fault. He was on my shoulder talking, right? No, it's the desires within us. And let's continue on. We break down those verses. It says, you desire, but you do not have, so you kill. You covet, but you cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God. And when you ask, you do not receive because you ask with the wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasure. So we desire. There's things that we desire, and so in this case it says we desire, so you don't have, so you kill. Man, I started thinking about it when I was in high school, the whole fiasco of Air Jordans and people getting shot for their Air Jordans hat. And you start thinking, like, would someone actually kill someone because they want what someone else has? And in those years, in the last 20 years, like that has happened more often than not. Like people like literally shot and their shoes taken off their feet because they wanted their Nikes or their Air Jordans. It goes on and says you covet. Coveting means you desire, you yearn, you crave for, you wish for what somebody else has. And we all look at what someone else has like, I want that. I wish I had that. And so when that happens, we fight because I don't have what they have. We make a quarreling about that. Or it says you ask, but you ask with the wrong motives. We try to say, man, I want that. I want what that person has. And maybe if I ask really nice, Tim talked about that last week, asking, it was his, guardian angel's birthday, right? Well, whatever. He had the wrong motives. He really wanted the kid's tool set, but we ask the wrong motives, or we spend it on our own pleasures. See, selfishness is because we're trying to pleasure ourselves. We're trying to have that gratification of ourselves. And our desires drive us to fight, to covet, to quarrel, even to kill when we don't get what we want. And that might not all happen on Thanksgiving as much, but here's the thing. It happens a ton on Black Friday. You think of those words, fight, covet, quarrel, even kill, to get what we want on Black Friday. So I looked and thought about the last 10 years. Like 10 years ago, I don't think Black Friday was as crazy as Black Friday is now. Maybe it has been, but in the last 10 years, just some of the things that have happened on Black Friday. Some guy had left Kmart after an altercation with a shattered hip. Like, first of all, you're at Kmart, Black Friday, I don't know. But like, you get in a fight or whatever, a shattered hip. I don't know. Shootings that leave teens seriously injured. One male was shot, another one was stabbed at a Westbrook mall. Some guy, without a shirt, took his belt off and began whipping people.
That's classic.
Yeah. In 2014, a woman broke her wrist and had a head injury from a falling TV during Black Friday. I don't know. There's been tons of incidents of pepper spray, like injuring like up to 20 people at a time. A man stabbed in the parking lot over a parking spot. In 2008, so 10 years ago, at a Toys R Us, 2 people lost their life in a shooting.
No way.
Toys R Us. Like, at what point did these selfish desires rule our life to the point that we shoot somebody at a Toys R Us? And then there's multiple times to talk about all the stampedes and the people who get ran over. Some guy actually fell down dead and like they would tramp over his dead body because trying to get into the store. Selfishness. Me. It's all about me, and I don't care who I hurt in the way, who I run over, who I take out, who I shoot. If we just had a little more peace, right? I mean, last week Tim reminded us of that quote that says, "No Jesus, no peace. No Jesus, no peace." I think on a day like Black Friday, we get the N-O Jesus, N-O peace. right? Without Jesus, there is no peace. Without Jesus, we focus more on self, and really that's what we're going to look at tonight is this idea that we have to know Jesus. See, we've become a culture that's all about the gratification of self instead of the glorification of God. See, we want to gratify our own self-desires instead of glorifying God. And when we do that, we end up with fights and quarrels. We don't really like conflict. At least I hope we don't like conflict. I didn't like it at all the way I felt for like the hour after I had that fight with my wife in the car in Hawaii. Like, that wasn't something that I was proud of. I wasn't proud that I got so selfish that I didn't take into account anything of my wife's time and feelings. So, yeah, the cause of conflict is usually self. So how do we cure it? How do we cure conflict? And James continues on. If we go down to verse 4, it says this, "You adulterous people, don't you know that friendship with the world means enmity against God? Therefore, anyone who chooses to be a friend of the world becomes an enemy of God. Or do you think Scripture says without reason that he jealously longs for the Spirit he has caused to dwell in us? But he gives us more grace. That's why the Scripture says God opposes the proud, but shows favor to the humble." Verse 7, "Submit yourselves then to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Come near to God, and he will come near to you. Wash your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Grieve, mourn, and wail. Change your laughter to mourning, and your joy to gloom. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up." So, how do we find a resolution to conflict? How do we find a cure for those fights and those quarrels? And it starts off with this, that you have to be a friend of God. See, remember, James is writing to believers, so this whole time, that if we try to use the cure that James shares, and we don't know Jesus, we don't know God, then it's not going to make any sense, and it's not going to work out. So we have to be a friend of God. That has to be where we start. It says there that, "Don't you know that friendship with the world means enmity against God?" That word enmity meaning hostility, animosity, or a deep-seated dislike or ill will. So if you choose to love this world, and usually our pleasures and the things that we try to gratify ourselves, when we choose that, it says that we are an enemy of God. So we have to choose that we need to follow the God of this universe. To say, I want to choose God and not to be a friend of this world. You can't have both. You can't say, I want to be a friend of the world and be a friend of God. See, when you're a friend of the world, it says you're an enemy. You have hostility toward God. Verse 5 says, "Or do you think the Scripture says without reason, he jealously longs for the Spirit he has caused to dwell in us?" You hear that? He jealously longs to dwell in us, to have the Spirit dwell in us, to be part of his family. So if you have never made that choice, if you've never said, man, I want to be a friend of God, I want to be in a relationship with him, don't let another night go on. Don't let the reason of self take full hold in your life. Don't let those things of this world, the things that we try to desire and want to be part of, don't let those things take a foothold, but let God be the one that we're a friend of, that we run after, that he longs, he jealously longs to be in us. The Spirit needs to dwell in you. That's the beginning of this cure for conflict. To let God be your friend. Number 2, verse 7 says, "Submit yourselves then to God." Submit. Yield. Letting God be in charge. We don't like that word very much. Because if we say that I'm submitting to God, it means that I'm not the one that's in charge. And that's usually why we have fights and quarrels, because multiple people want to be the one in charge. Multiple people want to be the one who's the top dog. And when we say we submit, we let the other take the lead. And in this case, we let God be in charge. Instead of being selfish, we are selfless. We submit to him. We let him be in control. That word submission there is the military term. That's the idea of being in order, to be in line, to let the leader of the army be in charge of you. And I'd say there's too many people today in our culture that wants to be the leader of the army. They want to be the one who's giving the orders, not taking them. So when we submit, when we let somebody else be in control, we allow that to be what we're characterized by. Living submission to Him. Not only do we submit, but the second part of verse 7 says, resist the devil and he will flee from you. So not only do we submit, but we resist. It comes from that relationship, that friendship with God means we resist the things of this world. We submit to Him and we let Him be in control. I love how it says in 1 John 4:4, you, dear children, are from God, and you have overcome them, because the one who is in you is greater than the one who's in the world. See, when we have a relationship with God, when we have Him in our lives, and we're submitted to Him, He's the one who's already overcome the evil one. He's the one who's already taken out the devil. And so we then can resist him. But it goes back to we have to be a friend of God first. You can't resist the devil when you still allow the devil to rule your life. It just won't work. So we need to be a friend. We need to submit. We need to resist. And then verse 8 says, come near to God and He will come near to you. What an incredible promise to know that if I come near to God, He's going to come near to me. It's not like I'm going to come near to God, try to find Him. It's not playing hide and seek with God. He's not somewhere trying to, evade you. No, as we step closer to Him, He steps closer to us. He wants to be in that relationship. And the more often we come, the more that we draw near to Him, the more we learn about Him, the more we become close to Him. How do we draw near? How do we come near to God? It's just like you come near to a close friend, or maybe you come near like someone who's going to get married. Congratulations, Tyler and Karina. So Tyler and Karina want to continue to get to know each other better. They don't just like, well, I'll stay in Grants Pass always, and you always stay in Eugene, and we will never talk on the phone, and you're going to get really... No, you have to spend time together, and the same is true when it comes to spending time with God. You come near to Him by hanging out with Him, by communicating with Him. Guess what? That means praying to Him. Just in communication. It means reading this love letter, the Bible that He's given us. Being in fellowship with other people who know God. Come near to God, spend time with God, and He will reciprocate. So we draw close, we come near. Next thing we need to do is we need to be moving toward purity. It says in the second part of James 4:8, wash your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Our lives have to be moving toward purity. We can't think back to it's all about us. It's all about my selfish desires, my selfish pleasures. See, when we let those things, those selfish, those evil desires in our life, we let Satan have a foothold and let him go and continues to pull us away from God. He makes us all about us and not submitting. And when that's the case, we don't usually stay close to Him. And we need to stop that. We need to turn and say, I want my life to be pure. I want my life to be clean and washed. Purify your hearts. Ask for repentance. Don't let the sin in your life continue and have a foothold. We looked at that in James 1:21. Therefore, rid yourself of all moral filth and the evil that is so prevalent, and humbly accept the word planted in you, which can save you. We need to remove all that crap that's in our life, all those things that take the place, that the moral filth that's filling us up. And truly turn from that and have a remorse for our sin. And we want to wash and purify our hearts. It says double-minded. That goes back to for me to think that idea that you can't love the world and love God. You can't have your mind in two different directions. You can't have your mind in two different places. You have to say, I want to focus on God. Final thing we see as a cure for conflict, James 4:10 says, humble yourselves before the Lord, and He will lift you up. The cause of conflict was self, and self's about pride. So look how good I am. Look at the stuff that I have. Look at who I am. And he says here that we need to look at who you are, and be humble, and take the place that we belong, realizing that God is God and I'm not. And when we take the position that's humble, when we take the position of putting somebody else first, those fights and quarrels and conflicts, that's the beginning of that cure. So we can let our selfish desires drive us. We can think that we always need to be in control. We can think that we already know it all, we already know what's best. And when that happens, I'll say our lives will be more characterized by fights, quarrels, and conflict. But when we realize that who really is in control, we realize that it comes down to, do I know God? Do I know Jesus and know peace? Because it comes from our submission to Him. That we are always resisting the devil. That we're drawing near to God so He can draw near to us. That we purify our hearts and we resolve the sin in our life. And we're humbling ourselves. And when we get that right, it's more than just a good Thanksgiving, it's a good life. It's a life that is putting God first. If we have the right focus on who God is, submitting to Him, humbly coming before Him, being selfless instead of selfish. I found this quote. It was by Abraham Lincoln before or during the Civil War. Civil War, pretty much a conflict. And he was asked if he thought he would succeed or fail. And this is what Lincoln said. Without God, I could not succeed. And with God, I cannot fail. Without God, I cannot succeed. And with God, I cannot fail. It's my prayer for us that we would turn to God and knowing that when we have God, we will not fail. We will not fail when it comes to any of the conflicts, the fights, and the quarrels that we're in. Would we choose to live our lives for Him? Would we choose to know Jesus? Would we choose to put God first, to submit, to be humble? Make a difference in the places where you are each and every day, because it's not about you. It's not about self and the self that we desire for ourselves. Let's pray. God, I just ask today that we would be, like Lincoln said, we would, with you, God, we would not fail. Knowing that that's where we have to place our lives. We have to place our lives in your hands. God, would we submit to you? Would we draw near to you? Would we choose to be humble? And God, would you take away our selfish desires? God, I pray that in the midst of our discussions and small groups tonight, would you open up our eyes? Would you, if people are still struggling with what it means to be a friend of you, to be filled with your Spirit, God, would they ask those questions tonight? God, would we be willing to ask and to open up about those things that we need to purify, to wash ourselves from, to not be a friend of this world, but to be a friend of you. God, we thank you for what tonight is, but we also thank you that tomorrow is a good reminder that we are so thankful, and so often we miss that we're thankful for all that you do for us. God, would we remember that and enjoy the time we have with family and friends. I thank you for those who have already left town. Would you keep them safe? And I thank you for every student here tonight. We pray these things in your name.